And hey everyone, welcome to Shedding Mysticism, where we try to debunk some myths and shed that mysticism out of your brain so you can think truthfully and think for yourself and not just supernaturally or whatever and believing in silly things that brings fear to mankind. We need to increase our mental capacity so we can move forward as human beings. Now, today's topic is about busting some myths in evolution. And my guests today are Genesis Undead, and, and she has some information for us. And Purple Rhymes with Orange also has some information that we will be discussing about these different myths. If anybody in the chat wants to kick in also, please do so. But don't try to join in the chat until after on the panel or whatever until after we're ready to have you on. We're going to talk about these myths first. Okay, I'll let you go first, Jen. Introduce yourself and what you do. I got everyone's links below, by the way, in the description. So
cool. Hi, I'm Genesis Undead. I just talk about random things. I have a baseline knowledge of a lot of stuff, and none of it's really useful, but I like to come off as informed as possible. And my credentials for talking about evolution today is that at one point in time, I definitely was on the career path to being a paleontologist. So I do know my shit. Like, I've been studying this since I was a little kid. And I got a few... I didn't research anything for this because I have a baseline knowledge of what I want to talk about. I more so just outlined a few of the common myths that are thrown around. And I'll get into those after our introductions.
Okay, Purple. You're up next.
Yeah, my channel is generally more just casual hangout things. As far as my paleontology background, it's just really all self-learned, but I used to spend so much time hanging around the Science Museum of Minnesota, a lot of people thought I worked there. And the volunteers would actually send people to me with questions because I knew more about the exhibits than their training gave them.
Well, being a Triceratops, you'd think you'd know a whole bunch, but some folks don't get that.
Well, honestly, how much do some folks know about being human?
Exactly. It doesn't make you an expert at being a human or knowing what humans are up to. Okay, I'll let either one of you start on myth.
So I'll just say a few of the topics that I had in mind to go off of, and you guys can choose which one we talk about first, I guess. We could talk about how creationists, young Earth creationists, constantly misunderstand the difference between micro and macro evolution and how they're really not that different. We could talk about how adaptation actually works in descent within a species. Or we could talk about how mutation and survival of the fittest doesn't always mean what you think it means, and how survival of the fittest isn't the best term to describe what's actually happening. So those are just three topics that I pulled off the top of my head. We can start on any of the three, whatever is more interesting to go with.
Well, why don't we just start from the baseline of it?
Yeah.
So you want to talk about adaptation first, or?
Well, I think that the big thing that creationists have a problem with, the young Earth creationists, is the same thing the flat earthers do, is that they're scared of really big numbers.
Yeah.
They can't deal with the concept of millions of years.
I actually had a bonus point I was thinking of bringing up, which you actually reminded me of. We could also talk about how a lot of young Earth creationists say we can't carbon date fossils because they use the Earth to carbon date the fossils, and then they use the fossils to carbon date the Earth, which isn't how that works. And there's more radiometric data than just carbon-14. But I feel like that would be just a little bit too technical and kind of boring. But yeah, so I don't know, Purple, if you want to start off with any opening statements.
Just kind of to briefly touch on that without getting in the technical points. The main concept of that is that different elements decay at different rates. But because we can check it by different elements and still get the same estimates, you have to either believe that either the system works or that all of these different estimates are off by the same amount. So it's kind of the choice between, if you've got a dozen tests, they're either all right or they're all off in the same way, which is more likely.
I've also heard that I forget who made this argument. I think it was Eric Hovind. That specifically carbon dating assumes that the amount of carbon in the world has always been the same, which we actually have a rough idea of how the carbon levels in the atmosphere have changed throughout the different eras in time. But like, again, we don't really use carbon dating exclusively. We measure the half-lives of many different elements because carbon isn't always like the best option. So yeah, I mean, I feel like that's a pretty good explanation of it. Like it's more complex than just like one single set of data that we're getting. We're getting tons of data off of these fossils. We're running them through spectrometers, right? And we're measuring, and they're all agreeing with each other for the most part. So
yeah. It looks like you just froze up, Jen. It's and I apologize. It's probably on my end too. It's I have poor internet and there's a lag when I speak in between. But yeah, there's many different types of measurement, scientific ways of looking at something. And if they all match up, it's pretty sure they're not all wrong because they're all different. And evolution also it's an observance of what's going on there, not a
sorry about that. My
Wi-Fi
Wi-Fi just crashed.
Okay, you're back.
Oh boy.
Where did I drop out at? Because it was like a few seconds, like it was like a.
I think you did pretty good summing it up, so we can just keep going.
Yeah.
All right. So, where do you want to go from here on the conversation? Because like,
yeah, I was going and I lost my thought there. Just as far as them, there being multiple different tests that all agree was pretty much where we were at.
Okay.
Right. So there's a myth about these tests just kind of being wrong, just so and that's kind of one thing I'd like to touch on. What is the actual myth, and then what you explained, how things work. How does that kind of clash with each other?
So the myth is that scientists are just making up these numbers when they carbon date because it's cyclical logic that they're carbon dating both the soil around a fossil and the fossil itself. Sometimes they'll use the metric data from the fossil to date the Earth. Sometimes they'll use the data from the Earth to date the fossil. But that's just the myth, and that's like the surface level knowledge that a lot of young Earth creationists put out there. The truth is that we use a lot of different things to radioactively date fossils and things like that.
Oh, key fossils
Right.
is one of the things that they talk about that they don't understand. It's not so much using a fossil to date the strata as, if there's a common fossil, and most often it's seashells. But if you find the exact same seashells in a layer that you found on another continent, you can assume that that layer was put down at the same time. Otherwise, you wouldn't find the same organism there.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's usually like, hundreds of millions of years, like the chalk walls along, Great Britain. I mean, you know how long, those are all almost microscopic little seashells, and they're all crushed together. And there's like these 500-foot tall cliffs made of these things. So it's a long time for these things to set up, But then you go to like South Dakota or something like that, where it's pretty dry, and you go dig up a dinosaur, and it's not the same chemical makeup that the bone was made out of. Part of being a fossil is changing to a mineral state that kind of blends in with the rock. That's why it takes so much to dig them out, because usually the rock layers are harder than the mineral layers that the bones are made out of. So it's a lot of strenuous work, and those bones, what it used to be, a lot of times you can date the decay of isotopes within that mineral and go back to the time before it started mineralizing, and you get your rough estimate that way. And that's just one method of checking these things. And how is the mineral made? Well, it sure isn't from the chicken bones out in your backyard within 10 years. It's millions of years. It takes a long time, usually, as far as my understanding goes.
Yeah, so the process of mineralization, I mean, it's basically just, it does take a long time, because what it literally is organic parts of bone are being saturated with minerals, and then I mean, I'm really like explaining it poorly because I don't have a good explanation off the cuff, but like the minerals. Yeah, please do, because I'm not going to be able to concisely explain this.
Well, what you generally get with dinosaurs is that, like, the dead body was buried by mud or some softer material that winds up getting compressed by the layers above it, so all the water is squeezed out, and it's over, a very long period of time compressed into rock. And while that's happening, then the organic parts that are trapped in there do wind up decomposing, so it leaves hollow spaces. It basically creates a mold. And then those hollow spaces wind up getting filled in with other minerals, usually, what's being carried by the water that percolates down through the layers. So then the minerals are being deposited into the hollow spaces.
If in a lot of this, there's a lot of earth studies. Go to Michigan State University, look up lysimeters, and they have these underground kind of like manhole bunkers or whatever, and they measure the leaching process of nitrogen and other nutrients for their grasses, because that's who does all the lawn turf studies. I had to study there, but that's the leaching process. And you get some of these more solid minerals like that. Those are the ones that's going to stick, the heavier ones that's going to stick inside these bones, like purple mentioned here. So you got the leaching effect is still going to go through, but they're so finite. Even when the rock layers start getting solid and everything, there's still a little bit to where when the rocks are still forming, there's still a leaching process before the bones kind of really set up. It's almost like baking a pot pie, just weather-wise.
This kind of segues nicely into another myth that I wasn't even planning on talking about, but the myth that, well, if the fossil record is accurate, then why haven't we found more fossils? And it's the reason why it's not as simple as just, well, if all of these animals existed for millions of years, there should be fossils everywhere. The fossilization process is very particular because you can't have the body disturbed or picked off by scavengers because that could ruin the skeleton. It can't be left on the surface. It has to be buried. Otherwise, it's going to get worn down by the elements. It can't just mineralize in any conditions. It usually has to be thick sediment like mud or silt. And, all of these different factors come together to the point where, yeah, I mean, all of these animals did exist for millions of years, and there have been countless generations and taxonomies of different species living throughout the history of this planet. But like, not everything fossilizes because we don't have good conditions to fossilize.
Yeah, well, and especially the part about that it requires something to be buried very quickly, like you say, before scavengers can pick at it. Otherwise, the pieces wind up getting scattered and bones wind up getting crunched up by other animals. So it's not even like
Well, to me,
1% of the population fossilized. It's a tiny, tiny fraction of 1% that is ever in the right conditions to be fossilized.
yep. To me, I always think mudslides, even in conditions that are like a rainforest or whatever, and down in South American continent, there they have mudslides with a half a mountain falling down on them all the time. And then, could you just imagine all the animals getting trapped in there? And then here's the kicker: they're beneath the environment. They're in the mud. They're not up there in the tropical rainforest or whatever it is, in order to decay or get drug off and eaten or whatever. So they're literally sealed their fate. And I'm pretty sure it does that in dry continents too, or not continents, but areas that does that in flood seasons too. But that might be more rare. So, and because there's less food and everything. So, in my mind, and correct me if I'm wrong, most fossils probably start off where there's food to begin with, and then they got a mudslide landed on them. But there are other conditions.
Yeah, I mean, fossils
Yeah, I
have been
think the most common environments for it are either mudslides or like at the end of a river delta where a lot of silt is being deposited very rapidly.
or there are fossils like from places that we know were deserts. And that can happen when there's like a particularly bad sandstorm that buries them as fast as possible. So, it is possible in a dry area to get a fossil, but it's not as reliable because it's coarse elements that are affecting the body. So, it's not the best for preserving, but
Well, and also
you know,
that the grains aren't packed as tightly together because all it takes is, single cell bacteria to get in there to decompose things.
yeah.
And then the organic matter will break down
Yeah.
too quickly to have left an impression.
So, politicians.
Yeah, so, generally it takes something like a mudslide that, pretty much seals out the oxygen so that no microorganisms can be living in there.
So do you want to go into mutation, because I feel like we're kind of going on a track into talking about like the actual mechanics of it, or we can continue to talk about
let's
like the fossilization process.
well, I think that that myth was pretty much busted, and we can move on to the next segment if you like.
Okay, so there's a lot of misinformation. There's not just one myth about adaptation and mutation and survival of the fittest. And the main argument I hear constantly about survival of the fittest is, why is it that there are animals that have defects, or why are there prey animals if it's survival of the fittest? Why isn't everything just a apex carnivore at the top of the food chain? And to break that myth, it's not survival of the most fit. It's survival of one that fits most in a niche, right? Because there's a lot of ecological niches that need to be filled out in order for a healthy ecosystem to thrive, right? You have your megafauna herbivores, you have your apex carnivores, you have your herd animals, you have all of these different, like, what we would categorize animals as. And if you can evade a predator as a rabbit, then you get to go on to breed and you pass down your genetics, survival of the fittest. If you're a fast hawk and you can see rabbits very well, you're going to eat that rabbit and you get to survive and pass on your genes. It's not about who's eating who, it's about who's surviving, right?
Yeah, it's not necessarily being the strongest or the fastest. It's just a matter of surviving long enough to have babies.
I found a shrew in my house, and in the one end of it, and I kept it there kind of as a pet. It doesn't come in the house or anything, but it goes all around because I live in a cabin on a cement pad. I don't have any mice. I don't have any snakes. I don't have any chipmunks or any of that stuff digging holes under my house anymore. So I'm like, hey, good job, tame the shrew. So in it for its size, pound for pound, it's considered the most voracious predator on the planet so far as mammalia, because it can eat 10 times its own body weight in a single day.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, continue.
That's an example of how like what we might assume to be a weaker animal just based on its traits can actually, with those traits combined, be a recognizable force in an ecological system, right? Like the shrew is a tiny animal, right? It doesn't look very threatening, but because it's evolved to be a efficient predator, right? It can stand toe to toe with things that are its same size or even larger sometimes, that's an example of something that's unexpected, because you wouldn't think what we would consider to look like a prey animal to be so efficient at being a predator.
Right.
But then there's a lot of adaptations and mutations that we would think immediately are detrimental, unless you consider what they might affect later down the line. And that's another myth, that mutations are only degenerative and not what's the opposite of degenerative? I forget. I can't think words.
Or you have animals that adapted to something very specific that allows them to survive. Like the koala bear is poorly adapted in virtually every way, except that it has the ability to eat something that virtually nothing else can eat. So it has very little competition for its food, and it survives. And literally, koalas are stupid because that is an adaptation to the fact that they have a very low-calorie food supply, that over millions of years, their brain has shrunk because the ones with a smaller brain will survive longer and therefore breed more.
So, it's even something that we would consider bad, like brain shrinkage, could be a beneficial adaptation. One of my favorite examples is the theory as to why our brains began getting larger than other apes. And that has to do with, if you look at the skull of a chimpanzee child and you look at the skull of a human child, the skulls are very similar in shape. One of the theories is that we lost the ability to grow big jaw muscles, so our skulls could increase in size, our craniums could increase in size, so we could have a bigger brain mass comparatively, because we don't need to have a powerful bite since we have the brains to cook, right? So you know, we don't have as
Mhm.
powerful of a bite. We're not as strong as other apes, but we're more intelligent, and that makes us more of an apex predator than something else. So we are physically weaker, right? But our adaptations have made us more fit.
To be clear, there were many different types of human uh, too that had very different adaptations. Our line just won out after Cro-Magnon, which, by the way, they had bigger skulls than us.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is scientists think because they were thinking about their environment constantly. They always had to have their head on a swivel, because they weren't builders yet. They were still just learning how to hunt and gather and things like that, as just before modern humans. So they didn't really even have gardens or anything. So they were just, they had to be learned all the time in every place they went just to survive. So, but then, we came along, Homo sapiens sapiens, and we really didn't need the extra because we used our brains more efficiently to get the meat and make weaponry and tools and things like that. So this is the result that we got. We got a bald harmonica player talking about evolution.
Yeah, and one of the mechanisms of natural selection that people don't generally grasp is that, evolution is basically simultaneously trying out many different things. Like you were saying that there were many different types of hominids. So it's not a linear process of going from one thing to another. It's, with each
Correct.
generation, there are thousands of mutations tried out. And the ones that help get passed on, the ones that are detrimental get weeded out.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of like, your chance of winning the lottery with buying one ticket is astronomical. But if you buy 1 million tickets, your chance of winning something is much higher.
Plus, it's not just that
Mm.
evolution tries a bunch of different things at the same time. Every single individual is a species in transition, right? We all have different traits, and the beneficial traits that we have might make us more successful, might make us better suited to pass down our genes, or they might be a hindrance to us. Or and it's the same with every animal. Every animal is a species in transition. We see this with selective breeding in cattle, right? We make animals fatter, we make fruit tastier, we make vegetables bigger. We do all of this through the same process of natural selection. We just selectively breed it to influence its path, right?
Yeah, we
I was
just
going to say
select
too,
for the
back to
things that are
the
most our
original thing,
benefits.
I
the
didn't hear either of those.
about the myth is that I think what you're saying is the myth of we were made with perfect DNA and it's been taken away ever since, the mutations and stuff, and that's not true. I mean,
Yeah.
some things lie dormant, and then some proteins or amino acids, whatever they are, dummy here, go into different pathways and actually create new spots of DNA information because of things like viruses or our thumbs. We grew thumbs, Homo habilis, and things like that. These are positive adaptations that we did not have before. Those mutations were added on, but maybe something else was taken off. I can't remember what gene it was. Aaron Ra was explaining it. The reason why we don't have muscles like the other great apes and everything is because of that gene is dormant in us, but yet it pops up every once in a while. That's why you see these little tiny bodybuilder kids and everything that shouldn't look like that. It's because of that mutation of a gene suddenly popped out. That's it.
And speaking of genes that turn off, that there's another mechanic to adaptation and mutation, and that's if a trait is not specifically selected for, if there's no reason for a trait to exist, it generally will stop showing up eventually. For example, a lot of cave dwelling animals that live in complete darkness lose their eyes, like cave salamanders, for example. They'll have almost non-existent eyes and completely non-functional, just vestigial. And that's because, you know, they don't need eyes to see. It's not something that's selected for. So in order to conserve energy, it's actually more efficient to not have eyes than to have eyes, right? Because it's just another thing that takes up energy to use.
Well, and an example in humans of that
Yeah.
is that virtually all of their primates have a gene to produce vitamin C. Now, humans still have this in our DNA, but it has been switched off because when we lived in tropical climates where citrus fruit was readily available, it was no longer needed. Now, after we moved out of those and we moved to, cooler climates where we're not getting the citrus fruit, this has proved to be a huge detriment and leads to the disease of scurvy.
Yeah.
But, because we managed to evolve the bigger brains and, seek out other food sources that we could get this from, we've been able to manage without this adaptation.
Yeah. So, I guess like my main point in wanting to bring this topic up is, if someone's talking about adaptation and it's clear that they're talking out of their ass, like just know that like these concepts aren't that difficult when you break them down to a microscopic scale, right? If you just look at the difference between a species and then its descendants, over time you'll start seeing change. It's a lot easier to think of this as a timeline than to just a lot of like young Earth creationists get adaptations wrong because they think, oh, we should be seeing dogs turn into horses, or we should see flies turn into fish. That's not adaptation. That's not even evolution. That's magic, right? It's not this fast process that just happens over 1,000 years. It doesn't even happen within one generation, right? It's a gradual process. So if anyone's saying why do cousin species exist if this species is better, for example, the common one is, if we came from apes, why are there still apes? Well, because we are also apes. And
Yeah,
Can't
well, that
outrun your
argument
lineage.
of if we came from monkeys, why are there still monkeys, is kind of like the same argument of if I came from my grandparents, why do I have cousins?
Yeah. Well, yeah, Jen's froze again. And that goes into the argument of what you always hear. Well, you never see one species turn into another species. And yes, you do. But if you're, you want a butt end of a horse to attach to a front end of a dog, to prove evolution, it's never going to happen because that's not how it works. That's magic thinking and creationism thinking that, somehow something just suddenly changed like that. It is not a sudden process, like Jen was saying. And so that argument is just, it doesn't even enter the arena of what the hell's going on. It really doesn't.
They don't understand, the idea of it all being very incremental. That, I mean, they like to throw in like cars as an analogy for, divine creation. But, to look at it for that kind of thing, a Model T didn't turn into a Tesla, but over incremental improvements on the design over many, many generations, you can connect that one became the other.
Yeah. I don't necessarily like using that analogy though, because a lot of times creationists will say, yeah, but a car is designed. Are you saying then that animals are designed? And then I would say, no, it's just an analogy, and analogies are not 100% accurate.
Yeah, you can't take the analogy too literally.
Right.
But I have seen young Earth creationists say cars, quote unquote, evolve, but you know, it's because of intelligent designer, and it's like, yeah, shut the fuck up. You don't know what you're talking about. You know?
Well, here's the thing. You know, it might not necessarily be all about, you know, young Earth creationist either. It might be somebody who just doesn't know. When I was on the set of that movie last year, there was a guy was telling me that, you know, evolutionists don't know anything. We're more related to pigs than we are, you know, apes and stuff. I said, really? You'd rather be related to a pig than an ape because it hurts your pride? That doesn't make any sense. So that's not how it works. However, whoever told you that, you know, was wrong. And I give him a couple of sources here, check this out or whatever. But he didn't get into religion or anything else like that. He was just lacking of education, and he heard a bunch of good old boys talking about stuff around campfire drinking beer. And that's all that was. It was just lacking of the knowledge. Yeah. So, you know, so if there's any young Earth creationist out there or anything, this is not a personal attack on this is an education of where the myths come and why they cannot be true in our reality. That's what this is about. Not any personal attack on anyone, just so everyone knows. If you see this now or in the future.
Some respects, you know, as far as the chemical makeup of our tissues, we are closer to pigs. But again, that's because of the way that, you know, evolution has branched off. That we did have a common ancestor many, many millions of years ago, you know, and the pigs branched off on one line and the primates branched off on another line. So they have kept some of the traits and some of the biochemistry, even though they went off in a very different direction.
I would also like to mention that if I ever say young Earth creationists, I'm actually just talking about people like Eric Hovind who know they're full of shit. If you genuinely don't understand any of these topics and you want to learn, and you're not an apologist who is purposefully dishonest, if you are honest about wanting to learn, I want to teach you. I genuinely do. But if you refuse to learn, then I don't have any love for you. Because I feel like we should all at least have an open mind when talking about, especially science, you know, one of the most open-ended fields.
Well, the big difference is, you know, scientists approach it with the idea that I could be wrong if new evidence presents. People who are fanatically religious approach it with the angle of, I have to be right regardless of what evidence presents.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, also, you know, they conflate science with and scientists with shills for big government. You know, it's all a conspiracy. You know, I've heard this on many channels, you know, in comment sections. Do you really, you know, trust scientists and the big government? They don't know everything. We're finding this and that now, and yeah, those are the scientists who's finding that new data, and B, scientists don't ever claim ultimate knowledge or authority. They leave the end open so they can, you know, that's what a theory is a working body of knowledge, and it is gaining knowledge as much, you know, as we can in the future. It has nothing to do with I'm right and this is a belief and this is a solid absolute. There are no absolutes in science. We have to leave room for further knowledge, and that can't seem to be understood with faith-based systems of any kind, because the whole idea is to believe first, and the evidence doesn't matter, or the truth doesn't matter. The only thing is convincing yourself to believe something, and that's it. And then everything after that. So it's basically running the opposite of the scientific community.
Yeah.
That's why
religion at its core had the same objective of science. Originally, they were trying to explain things that they saw around them that they didn't have explanations for. You know, the difference is with science that when we've gotten more information and realized that, well, that explanation doesn't really fit with the evidence we have for this thing, then we have to put away that explanation and find a new explanation that fits with the evidence we have now.
So this is I think the core reason as to why, as science progresses, the God of a gap shrinks. It's like an inverse relationship between the two, because with Christianity, and I'm just going to use Christianity as an example because I'm an ex-Christian and that's what I'm familiar with, right? They claim that the Bible is ultimate knowledge, and if you seek out the truth, it will always lead back to Yahweh. Whereas with science, they say that if you seek out the truth, you will be proven wrong eventually, but it's okay, because so long as we have a good enough understanding, we can use this to help further more research, right? It's the difference between I'm right versus I could be wrong, but I want to be right.
Well, and with science, it isn't even so much, that you find something and it's I'm wrong. It's you find something you weren't aware of and I've learned something new.
Yeah.
Okay, it is we've been at it for 40 minutes now. Do you guys want to open stuff up for questions and other people coming into the room here?
There is one last thing I want to talk about, but I'd be interested in having a guest on to talk about with it. If anyone is interested in talking about the myths that microevolution is true but macroevolution isn't, because that could be fun to open up to the audience as well. But also, I need to get a water because I'm dying of heat. So I'll be right back. If you want to bring someone in, we can talk about that when I get back, or you guys can riff.
Yeah, if anybody wants to come in.
Yeah, we can take questions or bring more people.
I don't know too much. I don't know too much about macro and micro. I know micro means small.
Well, really, the only difference between macroevolution and microevolution is the time scale. And like we were saying, that evolution is a very incremental process, very small changes with each generation that just accumulate over time.
Right.
So, the argument that macroevolution cannot achieve microevolution is kind of like them saying that, okay, if you put 1 penny in a jar each day, they can understand that after 10 days, you can trade that in for a dime. But they're saying that even if you do that every day for a year, they don't understand how you could trade that in for $3.50.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. But they couldn't.
Yeah, but that seems to be the point that most of the creationists get stuck on, that if you keep doing that same tiny increment over many, many, many years, that it can, wind up being a very substantial difference from what you started with.
Yeah, there's them big numbers again. That's, incompatible with the thought process. For some people, it's inconceivable of, trillions of cells bouncing around in your body, doing what they need to do, absorbing nutrients and pissing it out, whatever. And then, they help form the rest of you. And the numbers are astronomical and everything, but it doesn't mean, that you were created, or it doesn't. I don't know what I'm saying too much. Somebody take over real quick.
Yeah, well, I kind of get what you're going with. It's we're too complex to have just been an accident or random chance argument that I've heard being made by apologists, right? And that they'll say we're what's the exact term? Irreducibly complex. Which isn't really the case.
Oh yeah.
So to just talk about the difference between micro and macro evolution, real quick, it's the descent within a species versus the descent within a taxonomic group, right? It just talks about different times, and what a lot of a lot of people who promote these myths don't realize is that we have several different linear transitional fossils that help prove that descent within a species leads to macroevolution. For example, we can look at one of the earliest ancestors of what we call the true whales. Ambulocetus was a four-legged mammalian, like almost crocodilian-like animal that would wade in the shallows of water, jump up, and then drag things back and drown them. So, we have obviously not a complete fossil, not a complete fossil record of the evolution of whales, but enough to where we can see legs turn into fins, turn into flippers, and then tails turning into flukes, and then eventually, like what we know as whale tails, right? So,
Right.
there's like examples in the
And
fossil
not
record of
all whales are whales.
yeah.
Like the orca, for instance, is a dolphin species.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different reasons why we know that both microevolution and macroevolution are true. And the fossil record really isn't the best evidence we have for it, because, as I said, there's a lot of gaps in the fossil record, but it is a helpful tool for a lot of people who are visually minded, because you can actually start to see, yeah, this kind of looks like that thing, which kind of looks like this thing, but this thing over here and this thing over here with this in the middle, these two are different, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, well, like you say, the fossil record is the easiest way for people to visualize it, but it's the fact that there are many different fields of study that come together and all converge to support the same explanation.
and another
Oh, I
major
can't
myth
remember where I
about
read this article, but there was an article, I think it was on Yahoo, that said something about this cave girl. This is what she looked like according to the DNA sequencing. So, the code of the DNA, now we can actually go back in time and not just look at the DNA and see what we're related to right now, but apparently they can measure it out to see what your nose and your eyes look like and all that crap, thanks to computers and stuff, apparently.
Well, yeah,
Neat.
it's letting us see, a lot more features that may not have been preserved in the fossils we have. Because fossils generally are fragmentary. They never find a complete skeleton. There are always pieces missing.
I mean, there are rare
And
instances where they do find a complete skeleton, but that's like very rare.
yeah, well, and it's never a 100% complete skeleton. We found some exceptionally well preserved ones that, may be like 85% complete. But most of the time, the fossils they find, are more often than not just fragments, that they just find a handful of bones, that an animal will have 300 bones and they may be working from only 5 or 10 bones, but they can compare those to animals that had bones of a similar shape, and kind of try to fill in the rest of it with the pieces they have.
There's a lot that
Right,
goes
and this falls back. Go ahead.
there's a lot that goes
Go ahead,
into
Jim.
recreations of dinosaurs. For example, one dinosaur that constantly gets updated, and not because of just new fossil discoveries, but also because of they studied the weight distribution of it, and they found out certain uh, ratios of limb proportions had to be a certain way, and that's the Spinosaurus, which we now know is an obligate quadruped that had a rudder tail. So, like, it's not just finding bones that will necessarily lead to accurate paleo art and fossil recreations. It's also the study of living animals, the study of like weight distribution, hypotheses about diet, and all of these things help us piece together from like Purple said, sometimes no more than 10 bones, and hopefully make like a decent enough recreation of what it should look like. So
Well, and that's why teeth can be such a big such a big key to reconstructing fossils. You know, because teeth will tell us basically what the creature was likely to have eaten, and that in itself can give you a lot of clues, because, you know, if the teeth were something useful for hunting a particular kind of prey, that tells you something about, you know, what kind of environment this creature had to live in, what kind of behaviors it would have had to have in order to catch that type of prey. You know, the Spinosaurus is
or
a
even the
wonderful
teeth,
example,
like
because the Spinosaurus is one that they very much argue about back and forth about what it looked like, whether it was a biped or a quadruped, how aquatic it was, you know, and the image of it has changed dramatically over the last 20 years several times. And that's because every time they find some more information about it, they have to revise the theories, because they have to stick with the theories that will fit best with the information we have. You know, and if the new information says that, well, that part of the theory doesn't work, you know, then we have to say, okay, that didn't work. Then how do we explain this, you know, this feature of it?
hey, Will.
Hey, Will.
How's it going? How's it going?
Oh, you know, just debunking myths about evolution.
So, first off, Jenny, you are so well versed on evolution. It's impressive.
I was that nerd in middle school who had the little dinosaur encyclopedia with him.
Young Earth creationism is the crack smoking cousin of Christianity. Young Earth creationists got legitimacy about 15 years ago and have not stopped since. 25 years ago, they were considered insane, you know? So this is only something that's been allowed to creep into society in the past 20 years. Young Earth creationists, when I was a kid, they didn't exist.
Flat Earth 5 years ago.
You'd get punched in the face. 6 years ago, if you said flat earther, I would have swung on somebody. And now, you know, so it's one of those things. Young Earth creationists make me angry. Sorry.
I mean,
well, and Ken Ham is the worst of it, because he's obviously, you know, the only reason he put dinosaurs on his ark is because he knows dinosaurs attract kids.
Yeah.
His story would make so much more sense if he said the dinosaurs got wiped out in the flood and that was the end of it. It would be so much easier on him.
Or, like, how come the highest whale carcasses we find are in the Himalayas? Did they climb up there? Like, these guys, or trichromatic vision. How can you explain your eyeballs under a young Earth creationist framework? You can't.
God did it.
It makes me so mad when people say that.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I can agree with you. Like, I mean, like I said, if you're a young Earth creationist because you legitimately don't understand the science behind evolution, or how we've determined the Earth's age, or any of these kind of high concept things, that's fine. If you honestly don't know, that's fine. But if you are like a Ken Ham and you're purposefully being dishonest, right? And your explanation is just that God did it, and you're going to fly in the face of years of research, countless different research papers, an entire field of study, just because you don't want to be wrong about your God. That's kind of pathetic. It really is.
And I'm not trying to like get too hardcore into it, but this thought of never dying, that is cancer. Never dying is cancer. So what they're striving for is to be cancer. They want to be these Jesus vampires that live forever, you know. Oh, it's just younger creationists get me going.
I hear vampires suck.
Well, too.
I've always
But
wanted to
younger
try
cre-
something. Hang on, guys.
Okay.
I'm gonna try something. Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? The shadow knows.
Your cloak of invisibility.
There, I did it. Yeah. Alec Baldwin ate your heart out, son of a bitch.
The problem with younger creationism is that they have money, and people write these papers, and they, just because it appears to be legitimate doesn't mean that it is. And like Jenny said,
Well, and then trying
know.
to give it, stylish names like Prager University.
oh,
What the
PragerU.
fuck gives you the right to use the word university?
PragerU is bad for my blood pressure, and Jesus is a commie.
Yeah, Jesus was a socialist hippie.
Total.
Yeah.
PragerU
But I guess
is,
we're getting off topic here.
I know, that's what I'm here for.
PragerU is so intellectually
What
bankrupt,
about,
and that's the last thing I'm going to say about them.
Oh, they're bad for my health.
Google
They are-
Scholar? I had arguments with Google Scholar a couple years ago as a Facebook thing, and that's one of the reasons why I don't go on Facebook. But these guys are, citing the source of, science. I told them, the scientific method is to leave your bias and your beliefs at the door, go find out the facts, let the evidence lead you to the conclusion. And they sent me an article that said, oh yeah, science tries to get bias out of there, but there's always this bias and philosophical bias and this bias and that bias. And you could tell the thing was written by one of these Hovind fans. And the only sources that he had was other people on Google Scholar, because anybody can get on there, just like Amazon. Anybody can write a document and toss it up there and say, I published a book. It's the same thing. It's you're not a professional. It's not a scientific paper. You're trying to debunk science so it can be a belief also. That's what that paper was about. And I can't for the life of me try to explain to people how science works. It has to be truthful first before you can publish it, not saying, well, I believe this.
Well, it's the peer review process. And what they don't understand is the way someone becomes famous in science is by disproving a long-held belief.
I don't understand.
That's the way you get famous in science. That's the way you win a Nobel Prize. Is if you take something that people have believed has been true for decades and you prove it's wrong.
Okay, I thought you were talking about young Earth creationists again. No, that is exactly what science is. Look at what was it before Einstein? They thought they had completely figured out physics, and then Einstein came and changed the game, so to speak. You have to be able to admit that you're wrong. This person's right. Let's move on. Let's build from here. That's the problem with Christianity.
Building knowledge.
Exactly. Is that,
Well, and the other amazing part of science is that when somebody proves a long-held theory wrong, oftentimes you get the person who has been promoting that theory for decades working with the person who proved them wrong that, okay, you showed where I got this wrong, so let's work together to develop a better idea.
Exactly. I think, and that's my biggest problem with religion in
nobody
general.
wants to do that.
It's not progressive. It doesn't fit their narrative of absolute truth, which doesn't exist.
Well, I mean, are steeped in tradition, right? So you can't really be progressive and be you can be a scientist and be religious, but you can't be fully indoctrinated into a religion, believe it wholeheartedly, and be progressive about science, because a lot of times you'll find things that just don't fit, right? If you believe, for example, the Bible to be the inerrant word of God and 100% true, you have to both contend with the fact that the firmament is true to you and the fact that the Big Bang happened. So, you can't both be someone who's progressive enough to accept science.
Atheist
And
Edge, mentions about with Google Scholar that it's a good tool, but you should see how many times the paper is cited. And that's something that Nervardia talks about a lot too, that, the way
Yeah.
you judge a good scientific paper is by how many other people reference it.
Very much so.
If you have something that was published, but only one or two other people ever mentioned looking at it, it probably didn't hold very much good information. If you have a paper that's been referenced by 100 other studies, then that's got to fit pretty well in with the theories that go along with a lot of other things. Otherwise, they wouldn't be using it.
And that's my problem with young Earth creationists, is that they over inundated the system with their paperwork, with their dumb musings. And in the end, I'm sorry, a lot of it means nothing because they're just trying to fit their small, narrow view. And with that being said, I can't believe I'm about to stick up for the Catholic Church, but the Catholic Church has an observatory at the Vatican. They're not denying anything. They're working with it. I still think they're an institution that needs to be brought down, but they're not like young Earth creationists who utterly and completely just stand there with their fingers.
Well, the Catholic Church gets there eventually.
Exactly.
But it did take them 700 years to pardon Galileo for saying the Earth revolves around the sun.
Who was it? Was it John Paul that pardoned him? Who cares at that point? No, I agree with you. I'm not
weird
saying
how they still wear the Mesopotamian fish hats.
Oh, that whole religion. The only reason it's still around is because they own things.
Yeah.
The only reason. I actually went
Commerce.
there. Oh yeah, I went there as a kid, and I had never seen so much gold in my life. They had gold on the carpets. They had gold on the mirrors. They had gold everywhere.
I'm not entirely convinced that the Catholic Church isn't trying to be more progressive with the scientific community because it knows that it won't be able to keep using the God of the Gaps forever.
Exactly. That actually, it's funny you would say that. I saw a documentary, and a Catholic priest is the one who said that exact same thing that you said. They're basically like, we got to keep up with the times because we're going to get left behind. I thought that was extremely progressive.
Well, the Catholic Church has a similar problem to the United States. That with each new pope, it goes back and forth between whether they're progressive or traditional.
So true. So true. What
I want to do is go to the
Hey,
Vatican and exchange the little wafers for what do you call it? Drop acid.
Oh, acid tabs.
I want to see the Pope wasted. Yeah, I want to see all them guys wasted as hell and laughing their asses off.
To wander around the Vatican on acid would be one of the greatest trips ever. You would spend an hour just staring at the ceiling.
Yeah.
They don't mess around with detail.
Guys, I just took communion and I'm getting a message from God. It's a lot of colors.
Hey, Kevin.
Article I saw here. They're talking about
You're breaking up quite a bit.
Your mic's messed up, brother.
Yeah, I can't really understand you, Kevin.
Headphones.
Sounds like a connection. But yeah, I don't know too much about that stuff. But there, I'm glad everybody's here to help demystify with people that I know and am familiar with. Hopefully, they'll come and watch this show and have a little bit of questioning about this stuff, and maybe light a spark in their brain to where they want to actually learn. I'm all about learning. I've been addicted to learning since I was a kid, and just recently, the past couple of years, I just didn't have any interest in reading and writing. My medications changed, but I was always studious ever since I was a kid.
I deal a lot with dyslexia, so reading is a very slow, laborious process for me. It is easier for me to pick up things in a more audiovisual manner from documentaries, but you have to be a bit more skeptical about the information you get that way. because they have to present it to be entertaining first.
Purple, I have a great tool for you because I also suffer from a mild dyslexia. I use text to speech. I know how to read and I can read. I'm not illiterate, but I do use text to speech because I can have that running in the background and I'll get through an entire research paper on, like, I don't know, some new sauropod or something without having to actually read it. So that's my recommendation.
I'm an avid reader, and I still do the same thing as you, Jenny. Same thing. And I like always have a book around that I'm reading, but I still listen to I call them books on tape because I'm old, but I still listen to books, in my car all the time.
Oh, I love audiobooks.
Oh, absolutely. I found on, of course, it's on tape, but it's Star Trek: The Next Generation, and it's read by Patrick Stewart and Jonathan Frakes.
Yeah,
Nice.
well, even the kind of popular science books like Stephen Hawking and Carl Sagan and James Burke are some of my favorite authors to listen to those on long car trips.
And you just reminded me of something. Neil deGrasse Tyson has astrophysics for people in a hurry. That's on YouTube. You can listen to it for free. And I
Oh wow.
I listened to even there's a guy named Ken Humphreys. He's a bit old school, and he goes into it about the Bible, and he talks about Philo of Alexandria and stuff like that. But a lot of his books are on YouTube as well. And I've learned so much. It's not even funny.
It's funny you mention YouTube because a lot of the things I learn, I absorb through YouTube. I watch a lot of educational YouTube. If you want to learn more about the fossil record or evolution or different types of extinct animals that existed, one of my favorite content creators that I've been watching for like 6 or 7 years now is Trey the Explainer. Nice guy, fantastic guy. I've talked to him only once though, but I follow him on Twitter. He's just such a sweetheart, and I recommend his videos because he knows a lot of shit. Also, Benji Thomas is another good paleontology YouTube channel.
And Henry the Paleo Guy.
Yeah,
and also there's a channel called Edge. It's E period D period G period E. But it's basically the poor man's R&Raw. So they talk slow for people like me.
Yeah,
so
if you really want to get a good foundation for evolution, you need to check out R&Raw's Phylogeny Series.
Oh, it's such a good series.
It's a long series, but it really explains how pretty much all the life forms we know now connect.
Do you know I bought 3 biology books because of that series? 3, quite
Aaron
literally.
doesn't just have the lecture method going on. He has the background with the cartoon dinosaurs and stuff like that. Or illustrated, not cartoon, but illustrated.
Yeah.
Even the bones or whatever. I think my favorite one was when he was talking about Gigantopithecus, and he says, "Well, what do you do? What do you give an ape that can literally punch out an elephant? Any damn thing he wants." He's like, okay.
Yeah, he has a good level of humor.
Yeah, that's true.
Sounds like that ape is fresh out of prison.
I like his humor. Yeah.
This is going to come back to bite me in the ass, but this is going to come back to bite me.
I'm just joking on. Go ahead.
This is going to come back to bite me in the ass one of these days, but every time Aaron-Ra gets mentioned, I always have to mention that he is so hot. He is so hot. My heart hurts.
Well, that is actually my greatest brush with greatness. That I went to the Ark Encounter protest in 2019, and I got to hang out on a patio party with Aaron-Ra.
Awesome.
I know people who know Aaron-Ra. I'm just waiting for one day for Aaron to see me fangirl over him and then be like, "What the fuck is this?"
I was in a Godless Granny stream and he popped in, and in true Godless Sewing fashion, I waited until he clicked out. I held up a geode and I was like, "This rock is an Episcopalian." Everybody laughed. It was funny. Junk Shop almost fell out of their chair. It was awesome.
Nice.
I challenged Dillahunty to a shine off the other day on Godless Granny's channel, and he just kind of ignored me. Everybody else was laughing their ass off, but he just kind of. It's
You
like,
know,
dude, you need some humor in your life.
yeah, he's a little as somebody who works and helps run a nonprofit organization. Sometimes you have to lighten up, or you're like, I'm gray right here, but sometimes you have to lighten up. You know, sometimes you gotta laugh.
Yeah,
Well,
that
and
was my
he's
intent.
just Ardra is just so personal. You know, it's
Exactly.
like when I met him at the protest, it's like I had a tiny little channel with like 50 subscribers. He had absolutely no clue who I was, but he meets everyone like you're an old friend he hasn't seen in years.
See, that's awesome because he's a real person. You know, I met Paul McCartney, and he was the nicest man on planet Earth. He talked to us. He shook everybody's hand. He hung out for a little bit. I met the guy who played the T-1000 in Terminator 2. He was the biggest asshole I've ever met in my life. You know, so you never know when you meet somebody. You never know.
Okay, maybe enough fanboying here, and maybe we should get back to the topic.
Oh, your mic's still. But you know what though? In before we jump back on the topic, Randy, Kevin has us both beat. If you see him under a direct light, his head is shinier than both of ours.
Yep. Well,
Really?
I wanted to check in, Kevin. Did you get your microphone worked out?
I can hear.
No, you're still breaking up
Best I
on
can
us.
do.
Dang. Yeah, I wanted to see what questions he came in here with.
Kevin's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, back on. Sorry. Young Earth creationism makes me angry, and I feel like it's one of those things I confront immediately.
Yeah.
When people start talking about it, I feel like they should be confronted immediately.
Well, it upsets me especially that they're trying to push it into schools.
Exactly.
But it can be demonstrated as factually wrong, and they're still trying to teach it to kids.
It bothers me, and that's if it goes. We can go back to Texas, where people weren't educated enough to know what happens when ice is compacted.
Yeah,
that scared me. That scared me when I saw people doing that.
Well, and like everything that happened in Texas this year was not a surprise. 10 years ago, they were warned if they don't winterize their equipment, this was going to happen.
Yeah, 2011, where they had another deep freeze, and I think they had several companies come in and trying to teach them how to winterize their stuff. But of course, without federal regulation, why would they spend the extra money to do it? So, you know,
Exactly.
I think like the main issue, right, is that whenever you teach any sort of religious ideology in school as the one true fact, especially when it is contrary to what we know to actually be fact, right? That is not just damaging to those kids. That is damaging to all of us as like a species, right? Because it's just turning back the wheel of our intellectual honesty, right?
Our knowledge base.
But it's I want to say I agree with you, but it's also a certain sect, because having grown up in an extremely Catholic background, I know people that went to Catholic school. I didn't, but they still went to college, and I know people that work in the science field that went to Catholic school, and they don't have a problem with their religion and science. It's a certain sect.
I went to the public school, but I was brought up in the Catholic Church.
Me too.
You know, and going to the after school classes for the church, there wasn't any problem with that. They accepted evolution. They just took the view that, God had set up the system and things were running according to his plan.
Yeah, that's a more deist approach to God's creation of humanity, which I would be more inclined to not dispute. Not that I think it's accurate. I definitely don't think it's accurate. I'm just less likely to dispute it because I don't care about that claim. You're accepting real world science and rationalizing it with your faith. If that's what you need to do to have both in your life at the same time, then by all means do it, because it shows a willingness to at least learn.
Well, and
Right.
No,
I
I agree with
appreciate
you.
that we have, some religions that are at least
Well,
willing to
here's the
show a
thing.
path that you can get to science. Because what
Here's
really
the
bothers
thing
me,
about. Oh, go ahead, Purple. I'll talk when you're done.
okay, what really bothers me about the creationist dogma is when they're teaching this to kids. It's like, how many intelligent kids, how many good minds got fed this when they were young, and it's going to keep them out of college when we could have had some brilliant people here. That's about it. Go ahead, Randy.
Well, that's okay. That's the thing. I was just saying it's not that anybody wants to pick on somebody for their beliefs or that they're necessarily bad people or anything. Most people have been indoctrinated and duped into stuff anyways, and they really do feel that they're doing good. However, those beliefs have from all kinds of different belief systems that are not true has leached into our educational system and social systems and our voting systems and politics. It's leached into everything in our lives that regulates it, and it's the wrong answer. It hasn't worked yet since its conception thousands of years ago. So why are we trying to force it against reality in our laws, in our education? And it's a fact. Studies have shown, especially in America, we are dumbing down so damn bad. We're behind. We're like 37th, 38th country now.
Okay,
Yeah.
so at my
We used to be
job,
right up there, but now we're just dumber than a rock because of
it's
that.
so sad. I consider someone intelligent if they know how to sweep and they're a self-starter.
Well,
The standards have gone down
Right.
so low, it's not even funny. It's not even for
think-
construction, you have to have a certain amount of sense. You have to know math. There's certain things that you have to know in order to like do my job. And there's a lot of people that don't at all. It's sad.
So I think there's a conscious effort by
Excuse me one moment.
I think there's a conscious effort by the ultra Christians to purposefully make things like evolution obscure or not teach it in school, or things like the actual age of the earth and not teach that in school. Because, and I say this all the time when family asks me why I'm an atheist, right? My grandma, my ultra conservative Christian grandma, told me to be as educated as I possibly can be. So I went off and learned a bunch of shit, and that turned me into an atheist and a liberal, right? So, and evolution was a big part of that, because it's hard to rationalize a creation myth and evolution at the same time. The two do not work together. Some people can do it. Some people take a deistic approach with their belief in God, which is fine. I'm not going to do that, because once I realized that the Bible could be wrong about the creation myth, and the Bible was wrong about the creation myth, I just physically couldn't take anything in it without giving it a massive grain of salt, right? So I think it's a conscious effort to make our kids more susceptible to things like evangelical Christianity or young earth creationism, or all these traditional like ideals and values, rather than progressing the actual scientific knowledge that we have.
Well, in the end, people, they have to work with it, because what happens is that there is a scientific method, there's a scientific community, but it's not standing alone. If you know what I'm saying, Christianity stands alone. It stands by itself. It says, "Hey, we have the infinite truth. We have the truth."
Yeah.
And that's my problem, is that they're never willing to admit that they're wrong. And so there has to be a certain sense of personal responsibility, saying, hey, I don't know everything. I want to learn something. And I think they're teaching ignorance nowadays, and it's scary. It's
Yeah.
scary
Well, I
times
mean,
we live in.
it's information control, right? That's what
Absolutely.
it is, you know? And I'm not going to make the claim that Christianity is a cult, but I definitely think they do control people's behavior and information, so much so that they've weeded themselves into the government to spread this information.
I think
But,
they're a cult, and I get in fights with people about this all the time. I do, because I was raised in a religion, and then when I stopped participating in it, I was shunned. That's a cult.
Yeah.
You know, at least the people I was around, they filled the
Not
bite
the
model,
But
point by point.
I don't want to call all of Christianity a cult, though there are definitely some sects that are more cultish than others. For example, the new IFB and all those crazy people, right? But as a whole, I don't think it's a cult, but I definitely think, like I said, they want to control your information and your behavior, and if you don't think like them, then you're evil, right? And that's a justification they give for teaching young Earth creationism in school, is that this is the only way to make sure our kids are morally righteous. It's insane. It's a self-defeating cycle of indoctrination into an anti-science belief system.
Well, and we have the information. It's not like back in the day, if no one ever told you, you wouldn't know. Now all you need is an internet connection.
Yeah.
And you can know that your religion is BS
Well,
and your parents are lying to you, you know.
I think a lot of the motivation from the religious people is the idea that, you know, if they put all of their faith in one supreme leader, they don't have to take responsibility for a lot of things.
Exactly. And it goes,
You know, and it's scary to think
Mhm.
that you will be held responsible for everything you do. It's much easier to say
Like a bike
that
camel
I'm just
mentality.
following what the priest told me to do, so take it up with him.
Yeah.
I've always said that it allows you to not take personal responsibility. And I think that's the one thing that bothers me the most about
Yep.
modern day Christianity, is that a lot of it is like, oh, you're going to burn in hell. I want a righteous government to kill all gays, but I'm not going to do it. I'm going to have other people do it. And then
Well, that's-
somehow that's a
yeah.
legitimate argument when it's not.
That's the evolution of my personal beliefs, was that the Catholic Church had me convinced I was going to hell by the time I was 8 years old, and there was nothing I could do about it.
Me too.
So it wasn't until I completely discarded the Bible that I came to the fact that I have to be responsible for my own actions. So I didn't really develop any sense of ethics until I got rid of the Bible.
I agree. I was told, and you know, as an adult, I knew it was BS, but I was told when I was younger that if a man
Yep.
was to kiss, hold hands, or do anything else with a man, the ground would open up and you would go to hell. Spoiler alert, it didn't happen.
Yeah. I mean,
So it's, you know, it depends on where you're from. I grew up in kind of a, it's a cult, but it was more about money. So if you had a certain amount of money, you went to this church, other people went to other churches. So it was more about keeping these people in the building. It was, to me, it was just control.
so, I mean, it's interesting how you guys are mentioning the ethical dilemmas you face after leaving Christianity and realizing you have to take responsibility for your actions. For me, I had a completely different experience. Growing up, I was told exactly what my morality should be.
You break up, Bill.
Like there was a lot of anti-gay sentiment and a few of the churches that I grew up going to, and that shaped who I was until I finally decided to reject the Bible, and then I was able to not hate myself as much and come out as trans. So that you know, leaving Christianity helped me discover who I am.
Sorry, Ox made me laugh with the California is hell thing. Yeah, it's overpriced. I'll tell you that much.
Oh, where did Randy go?
He should be back.
Okay. I'm gonna grab another bottle of water. It's like really hot in my recording booth here.
No worries. Oh man, this phone is.
Oh.
There you are. So yeah, was that Ox or was that Amiganus that said that? Oh, it was Ox. It was Ox that said that. Yes, California is hell. It is. It's
Actually,
over.
Johnny Cash did a thing about the southwestern desert called Mean as Hell.
I love Johnny Cash.
Yeah.
I love and I Solitary Man was a Neil
Yeah.
Diamond song, but Johnny Cash sang it.
He's rebel.
I love that song. Solitary Man, that's a road trip song. I always play that. Now I have it stuck in my head. How you doing, Ox? But yeah, that was my main thing, was that the church is for control. It's to control you. It's to control you here and now. Keep your bits in your pants. You know, it just didn't make sense.
You know, and I understand religion served a very useful purpose, you know, in our evolution, going from just being nomadic tribes to being a society.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it helped hold people together, you know, and allow society to have kind of an agreed upon set of common morals. But, you know, it's kind of like, yeah, for children, you need a lot of rules because they don't understand things. You know, once people are adults and can analyze their own actions, you don't really need so many rules. You know, you just need them to be aware that there will be consequences for their actions.
Always, I tell my son that at least 3 times a day. In life, there's consequences for your actions, good ones and bad ones, no matter what you.
And that's something that's particularly difficult with autistic children, is getting them to understand the direct connection between the actions and the consequences.
Oh, that's why I have to constantly remind him. Because,
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's one of those things. Because and also, even with my son, like when he wants something, he's like, I want it now. Why can't we just do this right now and drop everything, you know? I feel like a lot of, I hate to say it, but I feel like a lot of it is maturity too. We no longer, you know, there was a lot wrong in the past, but people kind of sucked it up and did what's best for the community. And now in the age of individualism, it's not like that anymore.
Kevin, you want to check your mic?
Yeah, checking again. I switched devices
Okay,
now.
it's working now. It's working now.
Go.
Awesome.
There we go.
How's it going?
I
Yeah,
apologize again. My internet isn't holding out that well.
I'm right there with you, man.
Popped out on
No, I'm
us.
doing great.
Awesome.
I mean, I've already
gotta
dropped. I've already dropped from the stream like twice. I think you're fine.
I'm
Yeah,
kind
that's
of
one thing I can say
yeah, I
about
get-
since I moved here, that the internet has been extremely stable. About the only times I've been knocked off was when I actually had power outages.
Yeah, well, my issue is the router and my bedroom is separated by a bathroom with pipes, so the Wi-Fi signal is not great. I bought a Wi-Fi extender. It still doesn't like do everything that it should, but yeah, I'm sorry if I drop out because my Wi-Fi is chaotic.
Yeah. I've
Streaming
stuck to
always tells
physical
me it's best
cables.
to get like an actual physical like landline connection, but I don't even know who does that anymore. So
Well,
Well,
my internet is through the TV cable,
right.
and I've stuck to physical cables for my main computer. That I've got a 66-foot Ethernet cable, so every time I move it, it's physically plugged into the router, even if it's in a different room.
The way
Respond
my
to that
house is
comment.
set up,
I'm gonna say we should the 3 of us should have a shiny head competition. We get on here, get the best lighting, and just
Oh yeah, I challenge
I'm
people all
not-
the time.
I'm not
I haven't
above
waxed
putting
up
real.
today or nothing.
I'm not above putting some turtle wax on my head just to shine off.
Yep.
Okay, now, Will,
That-
would you literally use something like that, or do they have special products for that?
No, I would use cocoa butter or shea butter or like vanilla bean butter or something like that. It's
Okay, I'm just curious because, yeah, it's,
If you get-
it can look really good on some people.
My uncle, he shaves his head and it is so shiny. You could see him walking down the street. It's the weirdest thing. I swear he like sits there and waxes it every morning. He works at it.
I used to have half my head shaved, but my head wasn't very shiny. I just don't have shiny skin.
I've been shaving my head since like 98, 99. So like I just have dead nerves. Like my head is weathered and leathered.
Yeah, I have a little bit of that myself, but I do it like sporadically, so it's not all the time. So like this one, it's been a while, so I'm a little sensitive right now.
I'm bald all the way up to here and completely in the back of my head. So like the hair literally doesn't. That's why it's extra shiny right here. I have an 8 head. So a long time ago, I was like, let's just, yeah, but Sony has that fresh Brazilian. Be careful, trolls, troll. I troll back. And I might scare you and say yes, too. I don't think you can handle it, though.
I wonder what kind of a giveaway we could do if we had a shine off on this channel. I wonder what I could give away, or if we could get some charity thing going.
Oh,
That'd be cool. Yeah, I could think of a lot of.
You could get
I'm
like
sure
a dollar a
it's something that
shave.
you could use for a fundraiser, just a contest of who's got the shiniest head. And you could probably get a couple of guys to, get into it and be willing to shave their head for a big enough donation.
and then you can finally call out Matt Dillahunty, Randy. You can finally call him out.
Yeah.
I'll do something.
Yeah, and if he
If it's for
refuses, I'll just go bark, 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 bark.
If it's for charity, if it's for charity, I will shave half of my head for a ridiculous sum of money, but I will do it if you want me to. I'll come on and I'm not gonna shave all my hair.
Like
but I
a
will-
goal to reach.
Yeah,
I
like
know
I'll
there's
shave
an
like from here to
organization,
here.
I don't remember what it's called, but it's. Sorry, did I interrupt?
No, I'm never.
That's a
mind.
good
I won't-
idea.
Yeah,
I better
sorry.
start writing this stuff down.
No,
Yeah.
I show up and everyone starts jumping out of the closet. Nice to see you guys. I do have a pretty face.
Yeah, I can't
Well, I think
participate in
there's
this
an
thing.
organization that makes wigs
I am
for
willing to
kids with
shave
cancer.
any other part of my body, but not the top of my head. It's, I can't get my ponytail to grow back to to half as long as it used to be. So,
Okay, so to be real, I miss my hair. I do. I had a fro that rivaled anyone from the 1970s. I miss my hair.
Will try Keeps. I hear Keeps actually works. So
No, I
don't
saw
know.
this really scary commercial for Rogaine, and this guy, and of course they had to get the half black guy. He it was on YouTube. They're just interviewing a guy, and then they showed his before picture, and his hair was awful. But it seems like they get surgery and plugs. It doesn't seem like, oh, it's a one-off, like, oh, rub this on your head and your hair grows. Like, no, these guys are getting plugs. And I don't want pubes growing on my head. I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah.
If I ever go bald, I'm gonna try to look like Asajj Ventress from Star Wars.
Heck yeah.
Oh, there you go, Kevin.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. Ox says, get a wig. Who's to say that I don't have one? With my
I would
eyebrows,
have to get the most ridiculous one.
Collection back there.
I have to get the crazy hair one and the hillbilly crooked teeth and everything.
that is one advantage to being bald. You can just always get wigs and you can change your style very easily.
I have a niece who is a professor when it comes to putting on the wigs. Every time I see her, she's got a different hair color, or So some people are actually really good at it, where you can't tell. What's that?
I was just agreeing with what you said. I said some people make it look good, so
Heck
more
yeah.
power to
Heck
them.
yeah. I don't.
Yep.
I look insane. I look insane with hair.
Yeah. I don't think I'm going to have a problem with the balding. It's just, I've got a very slowly regressing hairline, so my forehead keeps getting taller. That's about all I've got to worry about.
That's what happened to me. That's what happened to me is one day I looked in the mirror and I looked like a 1970s soul singer. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. It was bad.
I'm not sure if you can see this, but I have like a very unfortunate hairline that looks like a bald spot in the back of my head.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But it's just like the way my
that's where
hair
it starts.
No, because it's always been like that, and I've never like lost more hair. It's just like a really unfortunate hairline.
My grandfather had a spot like that, and he always used to say that the reason he had that and he was so short was because he was such a good guy, and people were always patting him on the head and rubbing it off.
When I
My
worked
uncle
in
used to tell me it was from doing U-turns under the bed sheets.
I knew this guy. I worked at this crappy sandwich shop in downtown LA, and I knew this guy who he was an older guy, and I could kind of tell he had a rug, but I didn't know. And downtown LA, the streets are tight, and so on a windy day, it's like wind tunnels, depending on what street you're standing on. This guy made a left. His wig stood straight up. It was so sad. Everybody turned around and pretended not to look because it was so sad. I say just show off your head, but I have a round head. Like Randy and Kevin, we can rock the shaved head. I know not everybody has a round head. I've seen some square heads in my like some real life.
Yeah, that's also a reason why I don't think I could do the bald thing, is I've got a weird dent in one side. I think that would look really strange.
I've seen someone with an actual square head. So human anatomy is strange at best.
Hey, God, can you make me look like Minecraft Steve?
Must be the Neanderthal genes.
Yeah. And some are more prevalent than others,
Man, he went to the character creation screen and said, "I want to be the Lego guy."
You know what though? Like
that's where I get this brow ridge from. I'm a 7%er.
Boy, calling yourself a percentage of anything is different around here where I live. Speaking of that, when I was younger, my brother used to run marathons, and he's ran the LA Marathon like 15 times. I've seen a human being that is blue. I've seen one that had a green tinge to their skin.
Mm-hmm.
Human beings are
like some kind of disease.
No, in Africa, certain people are so dark that their skin has a certain hue to it.
Oh, okay, I see what you mean. Yeah,
some people are actually purple, and
exactly
some like an iron deficiency in white people can turn blue, or whatever. Some people are green, and a lot of people think that the depictions of some of the older gods and everything were based on people like that. There might have been a whole lot more of it. It might even be recessive genes. I don't know. I'm just saying they're around. You can never trust a transparent person. Everybody's got a color to them, but if you see a transparent person, you can see right through their shit. Don't trust them.
Oh, if I saw someone's rib cage, I'd run.
I'm just gonna keep my shirt on then because I guess I don't want to show you my rib cage.
No, we're talking about see-through, not trans. Like transparent.
No, I'm undead. I don't have it. Everything underneath my shirt is just exposed skeleton.
That would be awesome.
I accidentally took off my shirt on Mikey's stream, so people have seen my disgusting body. Because I forgot to turn off the camera and I had to change shirts. I don't think anyone saw it, but if you find that Bin Podcast after show and you see my tits, congratulations. Because I was watching it back and I was like, "Oh fuck!" I can't believe I did
glow
that.
in the dark.
What's
What was
that?
that?
I said I've never been accused of being transparent, but I have been called glow in the dark. So I don't know if that's close.
I stopped myself from telling about 5 jokes right now on that one.
Go for it. Go for it.
They used to be called the Reaper. I was in Reaper division, and by the time you saw me, you were already gone. That's why.
Oh, see, that's awesome. That's awesome.
I put all that stuff behind me. It's just nostalgic.
I wonder what they're doing outside, huh? They're selling the house. They completely flipped, and they're selling the house at the end of my block. And once we found out how much money that they're selling the house for, all my neighbors were all going to paint our house now because the property value has gone up. So everybody's like, I was talking to my neighbor yesterday, and they're like, "Oh, this house is selling for this and this much," and I'm like, "I'm going to Lowe's this weekend. I'm gonna put a coat of paint on my house." But the bubble's gonna burst, and we'll be back to America will go back to being broke pretty soon.
Yeah, and who's gonna have the money to buy property right now?
That's why every person that pulls up to buy the house, I'm like, wow, they must be rich, because we're basically in a recession right now, and no one's talking about it because COVID and everything else. But everybody's broke right now.
People are talking about it. The only people who are actively trying to talk about anything else are the ones who are getting mad over Pepe Le Pew not being okay and Dr. Seuss quote unquote being canceled.
Don't even get me started on the potato heads.
Or the Dr. Seuss thing. So, I keep ranting about that.
I only mention this because every time Fox News talks about an unimportant story, people are talking about something much more important.
And that's it. It's Fox News. These are things that no one cared about, but Fox News needed to create a story, so they went and told their viewers they need to be outraged.
I mean, one party is trying to get us out of one of the worst pandemics that has ever faced our country's history, and the other party is complaining that a rapist skunk is no longer in Space Jam.
Yeah. The problem is that they're opening up these states and they're super spreaders again. We know what's going to happen. It's not like, oh, there's no data. We know what's going to happen.
Well, no, did you see that, when Biden got into office, they found the Trump plan. And the Trump plan was to acquire herd immunity. We reopen the economy as fast as possible. We let 10% of the population die.
Worst plan ever.
See, a lot of conservatives want to shy away from that fact, but yeah, Donald Trump's idea was all the old people will die off and then we'll be fine, which is horrible. And there are a lot of not necessarily just old people get fatally ill from this. There are a lot of people who have heart diseases, who have other complications, who have lung diseases, and so turning your back on a very unfortunate group of people in America just because you want to reopen the economy is just it's psychopathic. It really is.
Let's not forget. I think Trump's his primary target was the economically disadvantaged, right? I mean, the people he gives a shit least about are poor people, and that's going to be one of the largest contributing factors.
And what people need to realize is when the Republicans talk about the economy, they are not talking about the economy that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. They are only talking about how the stock market performs.
Yep.
And Trump gave insane incentives to people that owned houses where basically you were allowed to borrow against your house. I know at least 3 people that refinanced because they got hundreds of thousands of dollars back because they owned a house over a certain amount. Trump was only giving tax breaks and only helping out people that were in a certain tax bracket. So he was making the rich richer. So if
that's the goal of the Republican Party, is to keep the rich in power and to keep everyone else subservient.
So he was feeding his base, though, by doing that. So, a lot of people who were on the fence about Trump loved him once they got money back with no consequences, even though a year or two from now they will have to pay that money back. But I'm just saying, like, he hooked his people up.
I mean, just to show how calloused Republicans are, like, not a single one of them voted for a COVID relief bill that the Democrats had to edit down just for the prospect that a Republican might vote for it. Thankfully, it still passed despite Majority Taylor Greene's efforts to adjourn it, which, like, fuck Majority. Anyways, so we've gone pretty far off topic. I was just wondering, Kevin, Will, do you guys have any questions about evolution that Purple and I might be able to answer?
Actually, no. But why do I have what ancestor are my bone spurs left over from? Do you see my bone spur?
Oh yeah,
I have a heavy bone spur. Who is that left over from?
so I don't remember exactly how bone spurs form, but I think it has something to do with the gene that causes bones to grow, not being coded properly. I'm not entirely sure why bone spurs occur, and I know it's genetic to a certain degree because my mom has bone spurs, and I think someone in her family had bone spurs.
It
too.
honestly gives me an advantage because it's reinforcement. So when I push down, it's actually a bit of an advantage. Like, it's good when you swing at somebody, you can knock them out in one punch. The older I get, I'm not trying to get in a fist fight anyways, but I'm just saying, like, it's not a disadvantage. It's just a weird part of my body that, it's got to be a leftover from some ancestor.
So you're saying that your arm is developing into the kind of club the Ankylosaurus had on its tail.
That would be awesome. Do I get to do cool stuff with it and, like, snatch apples out of trees or something? I also do have the wingspan of somebody that's 6'3", and I'm 5'9".
Well, there's obvious advantages to that.
Yeah,
having a longer reach.
Exactly. I'm way away from my computer, and I could reach. Like, I'm sitting way back from my computer.
Amazon would breed warehouse workers that way, and then they would save money on not having to buy ladders.
I'm great at swimming. I have a size 13.5 shoe. I'm great at swimming.
So one thing that I really hate about myself, but I find very quite ironic that this is a phenotype I display. I have very small hands for someone who is born male, right? But I have the exact proportion hands of every girl who is my height or slightly shorter that I have ever compared hand sizes to. So I think, like, I either lucked out with getting the correct hands, or I really fucked up and got the wrong body with the right hands. I don't know what went wrong.
But isn't genetics? Isn't it like just a gamble? My sister, perfect example. My sister had 3 children from the same husband, and they're all a different color.
Well, it's not necessarily a gamble, right? What it is it's probability. And, genetics is something that a lot of people are taught incorrectly, or not taught incorrectly, but not taught well enough. Because I'm sure you remember in school learning about Punnett squares, right?
Oh, yes.
The famous example is the big B, brown eyes, and the big B, blue eyes, and the little b. No, little b is blue eyes, big B is brown eyes. And then you'll get like hybrids where they have brown eyes, but they have the trait for blue eyes. That's not an accurate description on how eye color works. There are about 7 or 8 different genes that go specifically into eye color alone.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that was done by observation before they really understood genetics.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a helpful tool to kind of understand like how genetics works, but it's not really good explanation of how it works, right? Like the Punnett square shows that descent between a parent and a child is probability, and it's dependent upon the different genes that the two parents have. At the same time, right, there's so many different genes and so many different phenotypes and so many different ways of expressing those phenotypes that, yeah, you can have 3 kids who look absolutely different, or you could have 3 kids that look absolutely the same, right?
So I think my question might branch off a little bit from what we were just talking about, and I don't know if you addressed this earlier, so apologies if you did. But as far as some of the creationists, they will use things like genetics, or I think there's like the combinations of allele frequencies. They'll say like these chains or these codes are too perfect to be random, right? I mean,
Yeah.
do you have any like response to that? Like,
But what would you reference? You don't have another reference though. So to say like, oh, you have nothing else to reference that by, you know, that's my argument when someone says that.
Well,
We are what we are, you know.
This kind of comes back to when we were talking about evolution throws every possible permutation at the wall, and whatever works. So it's not like there is such a thing as a perfect adaptation, right? Everything is a gradual process. There are things that improve your ability to survive, right? And then hold on.
Yeah, well, they like to talk about like throwing dice, that
Right.
you know, throwing a 6-sided dice, what are the chances that throwing it 5 times you'll get 5 6s? And yeah, obviously the odds of that are very low. But if you take 1,000 dice and throw them together, the chances that you'll have 5 6s in there are really pretty high.
True.
right. So it's really a misunderstanding of probability there, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I feel like. Even young Earth creationists, I think they have a misunderstanding of the science, or they're trying to mold it into their flood myth.
I think the biggest misunderstanding about evolution is that it has some end goal. That the people who work at it from the Bible angle start from the assumption that creating modern man was always the goal and that everything was working toward that objective.
So the oyster had to wait a couple million years for us to find it. The, you know, trees were growing before we existed, so that for us, that doesn't make. I know
Yeah.
what you're saying. I love arguing with people like about that.
Yeah, evolution is much more like an artistic process. It was like, okay, these are the things I have to build something out of. Let's start throwing them together in all different combinations and see what we come up with. I've got no idea what the end product's going to be.
And there's like
Mhm.
adaptation isn't just one singular system, right? It's not just mutation or a different permutation developed from the combination of 2 different genes, right? There are like several systems in place that one could be different from their parent, right? And a lot of times, the people who make the claim that we things have evolved too perfectly, or whatever the however they word it, right? They're not taking into account all of the detrimental mutations, adaptations, permutations that didn't survive, that died, that never
Yeah.
passed on their genes,
But
right?
that's adaptive radiation, right? Is that what it's called? The development of an ancestral group of a variety of forms adapted from different habitats and ways of life.
Yeah,
And we
but
still have
I
many
think what
maladaptive
Genesis is
mutations, like
saying
cancer.
is that it's kind of the confirmation bias.
I'm
Is that
speeding.
they look at the things that that support their idea, but they don't even think about all the millions of life forms that were created that died out before they bred.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's
Speaking of
very
breeding, that reminds me. I need to do an experiment here in a second. Hang on, and
okay.
I'll do an experiment. Go ahead
The
and chat for a second.
accumulation of inherited characteristics that make an organism specifically suited to its environment and way of life, a particular genetically based feature, characteristic, or belief that results in an individual or species being better suited to some aspect of its environment.
Okay. Yeah. Will has the ultimate weapon. He has a huge biology textbook that he will read to you, and if you don't listen, he'll beat you unconscious with it.
I've been threatening. The only way everyone's ever going to pay attention is if I do an OnlyFans butt naked reading one of these many books that I have. That's the only way.
Be pretty lucrative. Yeah.
That's the only way anyone's ever. I've been threatening for a while.
The nude professor. No, just call it the nude professor. It works so well.
I like it.
Sold.
Or Naked Science.
Ooh, but that was a TV show out here, was it? Or was Naked Archaeology?
Yeah, the title's been used before, but yeah.
I missed that show. That
How
and Roman
about-
Vice.
How about this? Because this is a pun. Uncovering the truth.
Ooh. I'm gonna have to get a tan first because I'm not as brown underneath as I look right now.
You need a tan. Look, I'm so ghostly that I reflect purple light. Look at me, I'm a fucking ghost.
I'm blotchy in certain places. I'm blotchy.
I come off as a little pink pig for some stupid reason. I don't know why.
I'm that color. Like during the summer, I get a real farmer's tan.
This is without the purple
being a musician
light.
and talking about breeding an awful lot. This is what I had in mind. Hey Google, my balls itch.
According to Healthline, the most common causes of itchy testicles are irritation and fungal infections from poor hygiene or excess sweating. Regularly bathing and applying lotion and powder can prevent most cases. The itchiness can also be caused by STDs like
Google is like, wash your sack. Google is telling you to wash your sack.
Yeah. I tried it. It'd be great.
Oh, that's awesome. I don't even want to say. I don't even want to say
it online.
Okay. Personally, I have been promoting that during the pandemic you should avoid bathing because it promotes social distancing.
If
you haven't taken a bath all month, no one's going to want to get within 6 feet of you.
So
the fifth one would be enough. I think you should still avoid crotch rot as much as possible.
We have like bouncers at the grocery stores nowadays, and they always hire like the big beefy biker gang enforcer dude. You would get thrown out like Jazzy Jeff. They would grab him and be like, "Get out of here!"
I just can't believe our society has come to the point that grocery stores need bouncers.
Oh yeah, because we have a lot of people that refuse to wear masks, and our numbers are through the roof. You know,
I just can't believe it's a common enough problem that it needs to be addressed. I didn't want to believe there were that many people in America that were that big an idiot.
Oh yeah, and here, the store I go to, I asked the guy, I was like, because I actually know the one person who was a real life enforcer, and I was like, you work at this particular grocery store? He was like, they hired me to beat people up. It was right in his job prescription. You know, it's sad but true. They have to have some big, scary, beefy dude by the door, or at least 5 guys my size. They're like, you can't walk in here.
Well, you know, and that's why I really feel bad for the retail workers, because there is no way that they are getting paid anywhere near enough to, you know, be the ones having to enforce the mask mandates.
Oh yeah. It's insane here. It's insane. And it's law here.
Yeah. Well,
you have to wear a mask.
We've had a state mask mandate since last July that's supposed to have a $250 fine. And yet anytime I go into a store, there's about a third of the people who aren't wearing masks.
Wow. See, I've hear not as much because people go to jail over it. And it's not, you don't go to jail over not wearing a mask. You go to jail over having an attitude and trying to fight people. So if you physically are like,
Speaking,
hey, what's up? They'll throw your ass in jail.
Yeah. Well, that's the problem here is no one has
Speaking of
ever
which,
tried to
I would
enforce
like-
it, so people don't take it seriously.
Yeah.
Most
I would
places I
like
go-
either Godless Sewing or Kitty, the atheist, to make me a mask for the Harmonica Man.
Okay.
Like a black
What kind do
mask
you want?
with a yellow emoji.
Oh, awesome.
I don't know. Just something that looks like just a good layered mask.
Yep.
Something bitchin',
Well, that
but
was-
not too bitchin'.
Sloth
Then-
Girl was spending a lot of her time last spring. She wound up making over 400 masks that we sent off to people all across the country.
That's awesome.
And we wound up being the primary supplier for the long-term care home my sister works in because they couldn't get enough of them there for all their residents.
Same at my job. People were donating, and it was a big help because we did not have enough, and my machine was not fast enough to keep up.
Oh, and I normally don't give plugs to companies, but this is one I think is merited. That through the pandemic, you have not been able to get non-latex gloves or N95 masks at Harbor Freight because they have been donating their entire supply to medical facilities.
That's awesome. That's awesome. For as much as Harbor Freight has controversy
Cool.
with their stuff, that's awesome.
Yeah, they never have a 10mm socket. Sons of bitches.
Well, that's because it's the most common size. On every
Yep.
American car manufactured since 1980, even though all of the other bolts and nuts will be imperial fractions, somewhere on that you will find a 10mm nut.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
That actually had become my catchphrase in New York. That somebody had pointed that out to me, that I would start cursing at my car and I would say, "Don't you go 10mm on me." Because it would always happen that would
Good
be
one.
the one size wrench I wouldn't have handy.
oh, that's awesome. Let me improve my lighting real quick. It's cold.
I kind of. I don't know.
Sorry.
Maybe a color black with yellow insignia or something like that. I think that'd be pretty cool. Because I got that fedora and the overcoat that I go out and do my show with and all that stuff now too. So I think just something like that would match. And I'll pay, of course.
Send the dimensions to Kitty or me or your idea of what you want. Or
Okay.
just send the. Sorry, I gotta
I'll do
change my
that.
lighting. But just a general idea. That way we can get an idea of what you want.
Okay, yeah, I don't know what my size is. Big mouth.
No, see, I have a huge face.
Just get a
mine is
string and
huge.
measure it.
I just love this stupid thing. Purple said that they have one too. I love this stupid tape measure. It's
Actually,
total.
my fiance had one of those when I went to live with her, so I still have it.
Oh, that's awesome. It just reminds me. It's something that would be on the first Enterprise. This is something that would.
Yeah.
It's
And
space
it
age.
is useful, because there are times when you need to work it one-handed.
Damn right. And who gives me a hard time about it are the old timers on job sites.
Yep.
Because I pull it out and I'm all cocky about it, and it just comes running out, and they're like, "What the hell?" I got called lazy for pulling that thing out.
No, but if you're trying to hold the board in place with one hand and you need to measure the length to the end,
True. It's space age. I love a lot of the, I grew up right on that weird cusp of when we were still using the abacus to the internet. So, I'm still easily impressed by stupid things like that.
well, actually, we know that, Will needs that tape measure because, a black man can't reach to the end of it when it's fully erect.
And the water's deep too.
It's a two-hander.
This is for the skeptics. This is for the skeptics, you know. I'm like, oh, you want to know the truth? I'll show you. Let's measure it. That's a sign of a real man. We're willing to measure it on video. Joking.
Right.
I'm joking.
Why is it a whole different type of discussion?
You know, whenever I show up, it always turns into dick jokes. I'm sorry.
Yeah, let's just not get ourselves canceled. That'll probably be what the next thing is.
Let me
Who knows?
improve my lighting real quick.
The problem with YouTube is you never know what's going to get you
up.
canceled. YouTube actually deleted my channel twice before I posted my first video. Never figured out why.
Wow.
Yeah, that's stupid.
My best guess is because in the comment sections on some other people's videos, I was riling up a Muslim guy.
Darth Dawkins came into Atheist Mo's chat the other day to harass him. Kevin came in right after Darth Dawkins showed up. I was glad I got to tell him off in a smaller chat.
Yeah, that was funny. I saw his comments up there.
You know what though? That made me. That goes to show that Darth Dawkins will troll everyone.
Yeah, I believe he was on one of my streams a while ago, and then I had Mr. Batman show up as well, and I let him in the room, but it just caused havoc. So,
you know, I would let Darth Dawkins in the room if he wouldn't misgender and be a complete homophobe. He's just a phobe. Pick one. He's phobic towards it, you know.
yeah.
So I just don't trust him.
I mean, after Darth Dawkins called me the T word and then like made the claim that I myself like incest porn, which it's only because I called him Daddy Dawkins. That's like the only reason that he says that I like incest porn. It's because I called him Daddy Dawkins when he pissed me off.
I asked him why does he always I said, and I was joking, but I was like, why do you always troll men? He didn't say a word to me. He didn't say a word to me when I said that. He has a formula. He comes in, he tries to get you off your feet, and then he reads a script.
Velma, we have a clue.
Oh, I can't stand Darth Dawkins.
Yeah, he's a piece of shit.
And
Anyway, Randy, were you saying you wanted to wrap up, or?
Yeah, I'm gonna wrap this up here and go grab something to eat. Thank you, Purple Rhymes with Orange and Genesis Undead for being my guest on today's show and helping me with this topic of the mythology of, you know, evolution and or, you know, the myths about it. See, I'm hungry. My sugar's dropping. And thanks for Godless Sewing and Kevin Chaos for being on here and everybody in the chat. You're all welcome to come on in here and chat too on my other shows. Come up with topics. All the links for everybody is down below. Get a hold of me and let's get things rolling. Let's help people try to think. Let's get this education bullshit going because obviously somebody needs to. All right.
Absolutely.
And on that note, I'm going to let everybody shill their one thing. I'm going to start off with Purple.
Well, I'll be, doing my normal, just casual hangout tonight at midnight. So that's 8 hours from now. We'll also be on with Will and Jen later tonight. I'll let Will cover that. And tomorrow night at 7, I'll be on with the shills.
Okay, Genesis, you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, I'm Genesis Undead. I don't really like do a lot on my channel. It's mainly a place to hang out. But tomorrow, Friday, the first episode of Nat One Heroes, the Actuary of Blasphemy, is coming out for you guys to view. It's a Dungeons and Dragons campaign. It stars Mikey Famine, myself, Aisala, and Dishonest Ape Jonathan. And so, it's got a great cast of people. We're all having a bunch of fun. This is probably like the highest production value D&D show that's on YouTube, because we have a lot going into this. Like, we have no budget, but we have a lot of passion. So I hope you guys like that, because I'm excited about it. And that's pretty much all I got.
Awesome.
Oh, that's kind of what I told my ex. I don't have any money, but I am passionate. And she kicked me in the balls and threw me out.
Been there.
Or-
I've been there.
Okay, Kevin, you want to go next?
Yeah, I'm probably gonna go hang out in Will and Jen's side chat too. I don't know, see if there's any spots open. And tomorrow I'm dropping a new Bible study, and we're gonna do an open room, probably like 10:45 a.m. So if anybody wants to stop by, we'll be hanging out.
Awesome. So I am Godless Sewing from the Godless Sewing channel. You should all go subscribe to Godless Sewing because I am Godless Sewing. And tonight we'll be having the What the Fuck stream at 7 o'clock West Coast time, 10 o'clock East Coast time. You guys are all invited to be on the show. You as well, Kevin. I'll try to add you to the group, but I'm a boomer, so it's going to take me a minute. But you guys are all invited to be on the show tonight. We just tonight we're talking about gatekeeping. Kitty will be there besides anyone else, but anyone else in the chat, you guys are all invited to come on down. We just we start with the topic and then we go into the stratosphere from there. So wear a mask, don't be a dick, and be nice.
Be there.
Kind of. Awesome.
Yeah. Okay, and with that, everyone, I am going to end the broadcast. And for the chat, I bid you adieu.